In this video, I will show you how I make this jeans hardcover book without using specialized bookmaking tools. This is a full tutorial that covers the tools I use and the step-by-step process to make this jeans cover book from start to finish. Let's take a look at the features of this book. This is an A5 hardcover notebook. The book cloth is made from old jeans. The covers are made from a cardboard box. The paper inside is my husband's old school paper. I also added a couple of cosmetic details. Inbands are the small fabric pieces at the top and bottom of the spine. There are also subtle spine grooves along the hinges. These are not necessary for the book to function, but they give it a more finished and elevated look. Now here's the interesting part. These are all the tools I used to make that book. And they are all very basic, like things you can find in your home, garage, or kitchen drawer. Since we're using these basic tools, they won't be as efficient or comfortable as specialized bookbinding tools, but they will get the job done. Let's dig into each tool and material so that you can put together your own. Starting from left to right in no particular order. Scissors. I use all-purpose, heavy-duty ones. You will need it to trim the jeans, book cloths, and some small things, so you can even use a regular pair. It doesn't need to be a heavy-duty. A pair of binder clips to secure the paper while binding. These 2-inch clips are perfect for this A5 book. A piece of flexible, thin fabric to use as mull. Mull is used to strengthen the book spine. A piece of thin, natural fabric is best. Here, I'm using an all-white cotton curtain. If you don't have natural fabric, find some thin fabric that takes glue well. Old jeans, the simplest fabric option to use as book cloth. It's strong and takes glue well, and can work without paper backing, which is a process where you glue a thin paper sheet to the back of the fabric to give it more body, prevent glue from seeping through, and make it easier to work with. This is a regular jeans and it is around 0.8 millimeter thick. PVA glue or general liquid crafting glue would still work. Put it in a squeeze bottle for easy use. A 12-inch ruler. A wax. Ideally, beeswax. You will run your thread through it so the thread becomes more rigid and easier to control while binding. If you already have wax thread, you can skip this. This white candle I use here is made of paraffin wax, which I found out later. It sucks for this purpose because it's brittle and it creates crumbs. I use it because I didn't have beeswax at the time, but if you can, go with beeswax. A strong thread. I'm using a synthetic thread that I normally use to mend my husband's jeans. It's a bit thin, so I bulk it up for binding. Around 0.5 millimeter thickness works well. If you already have wax thread, use that. It holds tension better and is much easier to work with. Unwaxed thread can feel floppy and frustrating. A needle. I usually use curved needle because it's easier, but a straight needle also works if you don't have a curved one. A pencil or mechanical pencil. The finer the tip, the more precise your work becomes. A box cutter that you can slide the blade out quite long. This helps when you cut and fold your signatures, which are folded set of paper sheets that goes inside the book. A butter knife that would be used to fold paper. If you have a bone folder, go with the bone folder. A glue brush, medium size. You will use it when applying glue to a small, medium, and large area, like on the bookboard. You can use a paintbrush, but make sure to choose the size at least this big. Otherwise, gluing the board to the book cloth will be painfully slow, and the glue will start to dry before you get to use it. A rubber eraser. I use this to make an awl to punch signatures by putting a needle in there. Some people use a cork for this. If you have an awl, go with it. 2 basic spring clamps, about 6 inches with a strong grip. These act as your book press. Simple but very effective. Other types of clamps work too. Paper of your choice. I love using scraps or blank paper I already have. I also have lots of old school paper of my husband's, so I'm using that for this project. Cardboard box, enough to make book covers. I used the 3mm thick cardboard boxes. I believe this is around a medium thickness. Normally, I use paper chipboards of the similar thickness. It's denser, that means it's stronger and heavier. But cardboard boxes are strong enough for this purpose too. Thin and stiff books. These would be used as press boards together with the clamps. Ideally, find hardcover books or similar materials that are slightly larger than your book. Some wastepaper with a mix of loose paper and booklet wastepaper with the size larger than your signatures. I find cardstock wastepaper to be easier to use than thinner wastepaper. Cutting mat. If you have a large size, that's perfect. If not, just try to manage your space while you cut things. And if you want to make end bands and spine grooves, which are the book's decorations, add these to your list. A cord or thick thread. This is a 1mm thick hem thread. It will be used to make end bands together with some jeans fabric. A pair of round skewers, a bit longer than your book. These will be used to make spine grooves more prominent and permanent. And that's everything you need to make this journal without buying specialized tools. As for the process, I break it down into 4 main steps. 1. Preparing the paper. 2. Binding. 3. Making the book covers. And 4. Assembling. You can find the resources for making this book in the description. Let's start with the first one, preparing the paper. I'm making an A5 book, which is around 5.5 by 8.5 inches. This paper is around letter size. So all I need to do is fold the sheets in half, no cutting needed. That also means the lines will run vertically instead of horizontally, like a typical notebook. That might bother some people, so let me show you this. These are notebooks I made using scrap paper. Some pages are half-used, some are blank. When I write in them, I simply use whatever blank space is available. This one is for daily tasks, this one is for journaling, and this one is for weekly reflections. And I am happy with it because this is my passion, to keep my art low-res and use what I have. So, a notebook with vertical lines, it's very welcome. Now back to folding. The paper that goes inside a book is called signatures, which are sets of folded sheets. I wanted to use the entire stack of paper for this book, and I found that 7 sheets make a good thickness for one signature. I started grouping the sheets, and in the end, I had 11 groups. These will become 11 signatures once folded. This will make the book about 1 inch thick. Before folding each set, I knock the stack on the desk to align the edges, then match the top and bottom corners. I hold it firmly, then use a butter knife to flatten and smooth the fold. Repeat this process for all 11 signatures. Next, we punch holes into each signature so we can bind them together with thread. The stitch method I use is the French link stitch along with the kettle stitch. Before punching the holes, we need to make a punching template. I use a piece of cardstock for this. I cut the cardstock to 9 by 20.4 centimeter. The length matches the signature length. The width can be anything, just wide enough to hold comfortably. Then I fold it in half lengthwise. This is what the final stitches will look like. The kettle stitches are the 2 lines at both ends of the spine. They connect each signature at the head and tail of the book. The links sit in the middle and connect the signatures across the spine. The number of stitches depends on how durable you want your book to be. For a book this size, I usually do 3 links in the middle. Each link needs 2 holes, which makes 6 holes for the French links. Then add 2 more holes for the kettle stitches. In total, that gives us 8 holes spaced evenly along the spine. I mark each hole along the fold of the template. Next, make a simple awl to punch the holes by pushing the needle eye into an eraser. It's stuck there tightly, making it easy to hold and punch. I punch holes into the template first, then move on to the signatures one by one. I place the template inside each signature, aligned along the fold. Then I notice that the last hole on the right lines up with an existing hole in the paper, so I add a new hole on the template next to it. If you have a softer surface like a piece of foam underneath, that helps while punching. Angle your hand at about 45 degrees. Hold the template firmly and punch each hole. Repeat this for all 11 signatures. Now all the signatures are ready for binding. Let's prepare the thread. I'm using a synthetic thread that is quite thin, so I bulk it up by adding 3 more strands. First, measure the length of the thread by pulling the thread along the length of a signature, repeating it for the number of the signatures. In this case, I pull it 11 times before cutting. Then I pull 3 more threads of the same length. Now I have 4 strands in total. I tie a knot at one end to keep them together as a bundle. If you want to keep it simple and use a single thin thread, that could work too. I haven't tried it myself. I prefer a thicker thread, or at least like 0.5 millimeter thick. The thread holds the signatures together, but there are other materials that will reinforce the spine later, including glue and mull. I run the bundle thread through wax to help it glide and stay together. This did not go well because the candle I use is paraffin wax, which is brittle. Beeswax would work much better. Look at all the crumbs it made, and it didn't seem to hold the threads together at all. I cleaned it up and went forward anyway. Now let's start binding. To describe this in the simplest way, you stitch in and out of each signature, link them together, and tie a knot at the end of each one. Start with the first signature. Insert your needle into the first hole from the outside. Leave about 1.5 to 2 inches of thread as the tail. Come out through the next hole, then continue going in and out until you come out of the last hole. As you pull the thread through a hole, hold and guide it to avoid tangling. Place the second signature on top of the first one. Insert your needle into the first hole and come out of the next. Don't worry about pulling the thread tight yet. We will manage that at the end of each signature. Now make the first link, catch the thread from the previous signature, then go into the third hole. Come out of the next hole and repeat this linking step for the remaining holes until you come out of the last one. Use clips to hold the signatures together, leaving a small gap so the thread can move as you tighten it. Then pull the threads taut and tie a double knot. You can trim the tail shorter so it stays out of the way while you continue binding. Remove the clips and move on to the third signature. Go into the first hole and come out of the next. To link this signature to the previous one, catch the thread from the signature below, the one closest to your next hole. Then go into that next hole. Repeat this step until you come out of the last hole. Clip the signatures together and pull the threads taut. Catch the thread from the previous signature, make a small loop, and pass your needle through the loop to form a knot. Then remove the clips. Repeat the same steps you used for the third signature with the rest of the signatures in a zigzag back and forth order. Here's what it looks like before I bind the last signature. Once you come out of the last hole of the final signature, tie a knot. You will still have some thread left. Go back into that last hole, catch the stitch, make one final knot, and trim the thread short. That's the end of the stitching. Congrats! Now your loose sheets look more like a book, just without a cover. All these sewn signatures are called a text block. You might notice it bulges slightly in the middle. That's because the links do not pull the signatures as tightly as the kettle stitches at the edges. This is completely normal. It will even out later when we press and glue the spine. Next, it's time to glue the spine. Sandwich your text block between two stiff books. Make sure the spine is flush and straight by carefully aligning all the signatures. If you're lucky, a few gentle taps will do the job. Otherwise, adjust the signatures with your fingers until everything is evenly stacked. Clamp the text block at the head and tail, leaving the spine exposed for gluing. Squeeze some glue onto the spine and spread it evenly using a glue brush. Make sure the glue gets in between the signatures. To make it easy to remove them from each other after drying, gently slide a cutter blade between the books and the text block. Let it dry for about 20 minutes. During this time, store your glue brush in a sealable plastic bag to prevent it from drying out. PVA glue sets quickly, and a brush left out for hours can become stiff and unusable. While waiting for the spine to dry, you can start preparing the book covers. Since the cardboard has ridges in the middle, I align them horizontally to make the cover stronger and less likely to bend. We will start by measuring the cardboard based on the size of a signature. The measurement of a signature is 13.4 by 20.4 centimeters. Then add 6 millimeters to the length of the board. This will become the overhang area of the covers. Don't add this to the width because the hinges will take care of that later. The final measurement of each board is 13.4 by 21 centimeters. Cut two boards of this size for the front and back covers. We'll make the spine board later. Next, I made a spacer using the same cardboard material. This spacer will be used to create the hinge gap between the covers and the spine. The size of the hinge gap depends on your book cloth and the thickness of the book board. In this case, my book cloth is medium thick jeans fabric, or about 0.8 millimeters, and the book board is 3 millimeter thick cardboard. Based on experience, I found that a 1 centimeter hinge gap works well for this combination. After that, I cut the jeans fabric to use as book cloth. Choose a piece that is large enough to cover the entire book. No precision is needed here since we will trim it later. Set everything aside for now so we can finish the spine of the text block. We will come back to assemble the cover later. At this point, the text block spine is dry. I remove it from the press, place it back in, and gently nudge it upward so it stands open. To finish the spine, I'm going to add the mull and indbands. Mull is a strip of thin, flexible fabric that is glued to the spine of the text block to strengthen it. I use an all-white cotton curtain for this. Indbands are the small fabric pieces at the top and bottom of the spine. Here I use a thin strip of jeans fabric that wraps around a thick cotton thread. I make the end bands first by gluing the thread onto the jean strip. Make sure the fabric is long enough to cover the width of the book spine twice. Fold the long side of the fabric to wrap the thread with enough space to glue and not piling on top of itself all the way. Otherwise, the end bands will be too bulky. If the fabric is thinner, I may pile it. Press it down with a butter knife, then secure it with clips and let it dry briefly while I work on the mull. I cut the mull so it is long enough to cover all the length stitches on the spine, while leaving the kettle stitches exposed for the end bands. It should also have about a 1-inch overhang on each side. If I stack the mull and the end bands on top of each other, they will be thick and could affect the hinges of the book. If you want to keep things simple, you can skip the end bands and just use the mull. In that case, make the mull long enough to cover the entire spine. Glue the mull to the center of the spine and press well. Next, rough cut 2 pieces of end bands based on the width of the book spine. Then slowly trim them to size. I like to leave about 0.5 millimeter overhang on each side of the spine, which means each end band should be about 1 millimeter wider than the spine's width. This small overhang helps hide the hinge gap when the book is closed. Trim the bottom edge of the end bands so they don't cover the kettle stitches. Then glue them onto the spine, leaving the wrap thread slightly exposed so it forms a bit of a raised edge look. Now, it's time to make the spine board. We wait until this step because we need the total width of the spine after we added all those elements. To calculate the width of the spine board, I combined the thickness of the text block and the thickness of one cover board. For this book, that comes to 2 centimeters. So the spine board will be 2 centimeters wide. The length stays the same as the front and the back covers, which is 21 centimeters. I measure this on the cardboard and cut it out. Next, I do a quick test fit to see if the covers need any adjustment. To do this, I place masking tape at the top and bottom of the spine board. I flip it over, then place the 1 centimeter spacer between the spine board and the front and back covers. I set the text block on top of the boards and close the book, aligning the spine of the text block directly against the spine board with no gap. At this point, I can see that the cover overhang at the foredge, or the front edge where the book opens, is slightly too long. The goal is to have about a 3 millimeter overhang, which matches the 3 millimeter overhang we left at the head and tail of the book. So I trim off about 3 millimeters. After measuring and marking the adjustment, I cut the front and back boards at the same time. Now the boards fit the text block perfectly. Next, it's time to attach everything to the bookcloth. Place the book boards with tape still on them onto the bookcloth to check the positioning before gluing. Aim loosely for about 2 centimeters of space around all sides of the boards. This will become the overhang flaps. We will trim it to the exact size later. Along with the book boards, we will also use the spacer and a ruler as guides during the gluing process. Remove the tape and begin gluing each board in place. Using the 1 centimeter spacer to maintain the hinge gaps, just like in the test fit. I find it easier to hold each board while brushing on the glue. Make sure to spread it evenly in a thin, consistent layer. After brushing, the surface should look slightly translucent, not opaque white. If the glue appears thick and fully white, it's too heavy and may seep through the fabric, which we want to avoid. If you need to thin out the layer, brush over it with the side of the brush, which tends to have less glue. You can also lightly scrape off excess glue using a piece of scrap paper or cardboard. Leave about 2 centimeters of space on the bookboard around all sides of the boards. Measure this from the edges using a ruler and mark it. Or make a simple 2 centimeter spacer like this to mark each side quickly. These margins will become flaps that we fold and glue onto the boards. Once marked, trim the excess fabric. If you have a rotary cutter, use it with a ruler for clean edges. Otherwise, scissors will also work just fine. Next, we will trim all 4 corners. This step makes it easier and neater to wrap the fabric around the corners. If you want a precise result, make a simple 5 millimeter corner jig like this. Using cardboard or another stiff material, place it at each corner. Mark the bookcloth, then trim. One caution: the jeans fabric I use here is 0.8 millimeter thick, and the cardboard is 3 millimeter thick. If your materials are thicker by 1 millimeter or more, increase your corner space to 6 millimeters or more and adjust the jig accordingly. Otherwise, the cloth may not fully cover the corners. Now glue all the flaps onto the bookboard. Place the waste paper underneath. ideally something longer than the bookboard to protect your workspace. When gluing, work on the long sides first, then the short sides. Apply an appropriate amount of glue to each flap. Brush quickly and thoroughly, including the corners. Do not use too much glue. Even though jeans fabric is thick, excess glue can still seep through if it's too wet. Use a butter knife to help flip the flap over. Press firmly and quickly, especially at the corners. Repeat this process for all 4 sides, replacing the waste paper as needed. Be careful of glue residue on the paper, as the fabric can pick it up easily and leave visible marks. Avoid stretching the fabric while gluing, especially at the corners. Now the book cover and text block are ready for the final step, assembling. To assemble the cover and the text block, you simply glue them together. The parts of the text block that get glued to the cover are the first and last pages, also called end pages. The spine is not glued. It stays flexible so the book can open properly. First, position the text block inside the cover. Center it horizontally and vertically. Be as precise as possible because this is your only chance to align the book correctly within the cover. Leave even overhang on all sides while ensuring the text block spine sits directly against the cover spine. Place the book on your desk and open it carefully without shifting its position. Glue the mulls overhang to the end page first. Then insert a wastepaper sheet larger than the end page behind it. Apply glue, then brush it thoroughly, quickly, and without moving the text block. Close the cover. Repeat the same steps on the other side. Reopen the first glued cover and smooth out any wrinkles or bubbles on the end page by gently rubbing or pressing with your hand, tissue paper, or a foam piece. Do the same on the other side. Now that all active work is done, we let the press and time do the rest. We'll press the book for 1 full night so that the glue can fully dry and the book will be completely settled and crisp. To press the book, place a fresh wastepaper sheet on each glued end page to prevent sticking. Sandwich the book in the press, and before clamping, insert skewers into the hinges on both sides. This will create clean grooves along the spine. If you prefer a flat spine, skip the skewers. Clamp firmly and leave the book overnight. One night later, the moment of truth. Let's remove the book from the press. This is always the most exciting moment as a bookbinder. we will finally get to see the result of the meticulous work we put in. I ended up adding one more skewer to each hinge to force the grooves to be even more prominent, as I realized the hinges are quite large. Here's the final result. The grooves are prominent and look so good. From the top view, it's really satisfying to see. The overhang is even on all sides. When I open it, the end pages are completely dry and almost wrinkle-free. Everything stayed intact. Now let's check how centered the text block is to the spine board. This is the part I get the most nervous about. I find the midpoint of the book and open it. Then I take a look at the spine. That flexible spine can be a little misleading, so I lift it up and check from the top. Okay, not bad at all. Just a couple millimeters off center. And you can still see that subtle crown in the space between the spines. It's kind of cute. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I make this book using tools I already own, without any specialized bookmaking tools. And you can absolutely do this too. I hope my instructions are clear. I included the resources for making this book in the description that you can use and adapt to your liking. Be sure to check it out. And if you have questions, let me know below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.